Hello and welcome to the latest from Hearts Standard. My name is Joe Sked and I'm delighted to be joined by Craig Cairns once again. How's it going, Craig?
I'm not too bad, Joe. Not too bad. I just had a wee bit of a sneezing fit before we came on here, so my nose is still recovering a wee bit. So I just thought I'd point that out. How are you?
I am. Fine. It was a tough couple of days. I say health-wise, being very hungover from Thursday and being completely out of the game, too old for it. So, yesterday was a long day work-wise, so it's catching up on me. But yeah, I'm intrigued to discuss the big news, which has not gone down well amongst the Heart support, I think, is the best way to put it. Looking over the piece, and that is the possible appointment, or the set to be the appointment of Neil. I was going to say, is it Critchley or is it Critchley? Neil Critchley. Neil Critchley as the next permanent head coach of the club. That's kind of news emerged yesterday that he was going to be the next manager. We will, of course, get on to chat about that in depth. But first, there we do have a message from our sponsors. And our sponsors are Good Vibes Giveaways, who are proud to sponsor Heart Standard and offer fantastic prizes to fans of the club. Prizes change weekly and include tech gadgets, days out, weekends away, tax-free cash, and even OASIS tickets. Get your tickets now at www.goodvibegiveaways.com and enter for your chance to spread the good vibes. And there is some emojis with sunglasses. So, Craig, it has been an interesting last few days. I'll say at Timecast, we're just involving Heart of Midlothian Football Club because it was on, I think it was Thursday evening. I think that's when the chatter first began regarding Per Matthias Hogmo and Neil Critchley as the front runners, or the two-man shortlist as to the next Heart of Midlothian head coach. And then on Friday, it appeared first that Hogmo was going to be the man to be given the job. And then before the day was out, just before you were about to log off, it emerged that he was no longer in the running, and the talks had broken down, which led into the weekend. There were some more names mentioned. Rob Page was mentioned. Gary Rowett was mentioned. Of course, we had Horneland previously. Earlier in the week was mentioned the brand manager, but then yesterday I got wind of Critchley being the man who's been chosen to replace Steven Naismith on Sunday afternoon, and it seems like it's only a matter of time before that announcement is made by the football club. Before we get into talking about Critchley and I don't want to say fallout, but just like the debate and discussion that a lot of Hearts fans are having on social media and group chats and wherever. You did have a wee look at Hogmo. When it emerged that he was likely going to be the next manager. So give us a wee bit of info on him, what you found, and whether it's like here's what you could have had.
It was a very interesting one. Not what I was kind of expecting when we kicked off this process. He doesn't come across as, I suppose, given his age and his look and how long he's been in the game, he maybe doesn't stand out as somebody who'd be willing to just be kind of like a head coach under a director of football or whatever it is. But those sort of first impressions aside, he's had a really long and varied career, from international football, both men's and women's, at different age groups, to a number of different clubs, lots of different experiences within them, and including Europe. So, and most recently in Japan as well. So there was a lot of experience there, in direct contrast to the last manager. And yeah, the general consensus for the little while seemed to be that people were generally quite excited about it. Whereas, as we'll come on to, it seems to be the opposite with the man that it looks like it's going to be. For me, I think I'm in the same boat with both, that I just really don't know. I mean, we're in a really sort of precarious position at the moment. I don't know exactly, without being able to peek behind the scenes, I don't really know what we need at the moment. So for me to pretend that I know that Hogmo would be a success and Critchley wouldn't, or vice versa, I think that would be disingenuous. So yeah, I did find it a really interesting candidate, but I've no idea if that excitement that the fans initially seemed to have about the appointment would have been backed up.
Yeah, it's I was out of the game on Friday, so it was very much on you, and I didn't get the chance. I didn't even get the chance to have a in-depth look at him and make up an opinion on it. So, but it does seem that from what I believe that like wasn't like a massive mistake from the board, that he went through the interview process, did a presentation, and impressed, and it seemed like the deal got really far, and then he just basically pulled the plug on it. There's been chat about potentially Djurgårdens in Sweden as an option for him. So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, and if he speaks about it, and also when we get the chance to imagine when the next manager's introduced, we'll get a chance to speak to McKinley about it as well, or someone from the club as well. So while there will be a new manager in total, it'll be interesting to ask about how that kind of materialised. And there's obviously people mentioning the fact that it looks like Critchley is the second choice. Again, we'll find that out. So we'll move on to talk about Neil Critchley, and there's loads of comments already. So I'll read some out, and then we'll probably answer, rather than go through and answer each one, we'll probably answer it just as we talk. Scott Alexander, I am underwhelmed by his appointment. We'll give him a chance to prove me wrong. Rory Cunningham, fans tearing into him already. He's a manager at our level. What do we expect? Mr. Maug, this is a disaster appointment. Might as well have kept Naismith from the job. Critchley's 3-5-2 passive approach isn't what we need.
Just because he played one of the two most popular formations in world football for a spell doesn't mean that mean he's tied to it for his entire career, or there's not nuances within that, or there weren't circumstances around why he had to play that formation. It's just, I mean, he played 4-3-3 when he was a Liverpool under-23s manager. It's like
so. Yeah, we'll come on to talk about that, because that's something that's and you're right. It's like this again. Damon said as well. This appointment gives me the fear his preferred formation of the three at the back, which is apparently quite stubborn, which I feel does not suit us. I don't think his preferred formation is three at back. We'll come on to talk about kind of his view on his philosophy on formations. DW says, really an awful appointment. Graham says, I really hope he does well, but his record is a big concern, and it doesn't appear he was first choice. G makes a good point. What similarities do Hogmo and Critchley have, so that they're both top of the list? Does it work like that? And Ben says, I'd love to welcome the new guy and give him a chance, but I cannot ignore how we completely butchered us signing a much better manager because of our club's power struggle.
Go back to one of the ones there a second ago. I think one of the criteria, and this is just my speculation, but one of the criteria was a track record of improving teams. And I think both fall into that category. I think one maybe has a lot more. There's a lot more evidence there to assess for one than for the other, but that was one of the criteria, and that seems to be what both of them meet, regardless of Critchley's recent stints in management. I think he does at least have some level of improving teams. He was well thought of for his first spell at Blackpool, and kind of soured that a bit by how he left, and then went back. And I don't know. He took a team that was in a bit of a lull, really, in League One, and he overachieved to take them up to the Championship, and then he overachieved again to keep them there. So there's definitely I don't know whether I'm skipping ahead to and covering loads of different points here, but I think that I think Hearts probably want the next manager as well to be somebody who has a focus on youth, and because I think that's going to be a big part of, if we go ahead with this investment and stuff, a big part of that is going to be developing talent. Some of that's bringing it in and developing it and selling it. Some of it's developing your own from your academy. And he's got recent experience of working in one of the best academies in world football and almost won the under-23s league there. I know that's a completely different type of competition, and it's like more of a focus on development than there is on actually titles and honours and all that kind of stuff. But again, there's boxes there that he ticks. I think it is worrying what he's been up to in management recently. But Blackpool are a team that are kind of firefighting a bit to an extent because they're investing quite a lot off the pitch and training grounds and things like that. And QPR have been a basket case with managers for as long as I can remember. So I don't know how much we can read into that. That said, I think he's on record. I think he has like the worst record ever as a QPR manager, although it's only like 12 games or something like that.
So yeah, I think in terms of what they were looking for in a manager was someone who has experience of improving teams, someone who has experience of working with younger players or developing players, which he has with, as you said, Blackpool. So you go back, he retired very young, and then he went into Crewe Alexandra, and then he spent 6.5, nearly 7 years at Liverpool.
Another great academy. That's what I meant to add to what I was saying. Yeah, that's another argument for like working with developing young players.
So he spent 6.5 years at Liverpool. We worked closely with Brendan Rodgers, closely with Jurgen Klopp, and helped develop the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold. And then he got the opportunity to go to Blackpool. And like you said, he did really well at Blackpool in his first stint. He got them promoted, and then he kept them in the Championship. And it was there when he got them promoted that he played this is probably more in keeping with kind of what we've seen over the last 12 months. He wasn't wedded to one formation, and he wasn't. You weren't too sure. Like, fans were always kept kind of second guessing as to what Blackpool team were going to turn up in terms of formation and personnel. And then they were successful. He went then to join Steven Gerrard at Aston Villa as a backroom coach, and then he went down to QPR, where he was. It wasn't great, but doing
also,
some research.
Sorry, carry on.
Doing some research into QPR is that I think all QPR fans agreed that he was probably just the wrong appointment, and it was probably right to move him on. But just because he was too similar to Michael Beale, who was replaced, and it kind of just continued that downward trajectory until they changed it, and then he went back to Blackpool, and fine, but it wasn't nearly as successful as his first stint.
People seem to be taking what I'm saying as if I'm saying that all he's going to do is develop youth. That's not what I said. I said there was like a couple of different things that I knew that the club were looking for in a candidate, and one of them was improving a first team, and the other thing was developing youth. And he's got a track record of doing both of those things. I wasn't saying that this is the only thing that he can do, or this is the best thing this is the thing that he's best at. So only a few years ago, he was considered one of the top coaches in England, one of a select few that was invited onto an elite training course.
I think this is where he looks like. I think I can completely understand. So I'll just answer this one. It's like Beale left QPR top joy United, and he left them when they were in 8th or 9th, and then Critchley got them up to 6th.
He probably says that he left them when they were in top
before kind of the wheels came off. But I can understand why fans are underwhelmed by the appointment, just because fans will naturally look at the fact that it's like as soon as the analytics and Tony Bloom came on board, I think they were looking for a sexier appointment, and I don't think Critchley falls into this. He's managed in lower leagues England. He's not managed a club. So, well, he's worked at Liverpool, but he's not managed a team where the pressure and the scrutiny is as intense as at Tynecastle. And I think that'll be really interesting to see.
What's so sexy about Hogmo then compared to Critchley? What's so sexy about Hogmo?
Because he's foreign.
I don't get why one is so everybody gets excited about and one everybody hates. And really, we don't really know much other than scanning a few Wikipedia articles or looking at like some tactical analysis or what previous podcasts have said. That's where everybody's getting their information. Now, we have supposedly used Jamestown Analytics for this. You think they're just using the information that everybody else can just scan off the internet? I don't think so. I'm not saying that this is 100% going to work. I don't get the everybody throwing the toys out the pram and saying it's a disaster before anything's happened yet.
I think I think there's two different managers.
Critchley took Blackpool, unfancied in League One, to a playoff final and promoted them. I mean,
I'm just on
a short career as well.
All I'm saying with Hogmo is that he's I think he's far more experienced. I think there's a bigger track record there, and the fact that he's managed in different countries, he's managed he's managed teams to success, and he's got experience, like a lot more experience as well. I do think they were,
and also it was getting written everywhere that he won the league with Rosenborg. He didn't. He left them 10 points. Off the top of the league. His assistant took over it, won the league, won 8 games in a row, won the league and won Coach of the Year. So he didn't win the league with Rosenborg, from what I can tell anyway. I don't know.
All I'm making the point is I can completely understand why Hearts fans, I can see the difference between the two. That Hogmo has managed more games, maybe 3 times as many games as Critchley has. He's managed in different kind of different leagues, managed in different countries. And I think that's a good point. Alexander says, "Sorry guys, we're going to stop talking about Hogmo. Totally irrelevant. You direct us move on." Which we will. We'll talk about Critchley, and it's. I look at him and he wouldn't be my first choice. That's what I'm saying. And I'm slightly underwhelmed by him. I thought there would be a bigger track record. Bigger track record there, but this isn't me saying when I say he's a disaster. And I think that's where you have to separate it. Is that you can be maybe underwhelmed, but then to just naturally write him off, I think that's a bit harsh.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's enough there to think that. I think people are allowed to, and I think we're not very good at this in Britain, but I think people are allowed to do well, fail, and then get back on the horse and do well again. I don't know. I don't know why we're so quick to write people off sometimes. I mean, you mentioned Trent Alexander-Arnold earlier. Players like him and Harvey Elliott speak highly of this guy and say they played a big part in his development. I agree with you that I can understand people being underwhelmed. I think the fact is we don't really know how this is going to turn out. We don't really know exactly why these people have been identified as the 2 candidates. And I certainly think the guy deserves a chance before being written off, before he's even taken a training session, before he's even got the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me on to a question that Dave asked. Question, lads. If he does get appointed, do you think he'll start with almost one hand behind his back with the negativity? And there's a part of me that does kind of. He starts off. I think usually with a manager, you get a wee bit of a honeymoon period, and there's a wee bit of excitement. I feel sorry for him because I don't think he gets that. I think because he. I think he'd struggle to get it anyway, but if there wasn't just a lot of kind of suspicion around it, just because the team are bottom of the league, you mentioned it earlier on, they're in a really difficult situation, bottom of the league, and then it's not as if he comes into an easy run of games. It's quite intense run of games, so he doesn't have a lot of time on the training ground. Got St Mirren at home, and then European match, and then Easter Road. Easter Road, you know how much Hearts fans value the derby, and like, just if you just know how perception happens. If it went wrong there, then is like on the back foot immediately. So yeah, this is where I do feel I have a lot of sympathy for him with just with the negative aspect of it.
He also seems to start very poorly. Even when he did well at Blackpool, he started poorly. He can't remember exactly the stat, but like the first 8 to 10 games or something didn't go very well. So even if he is the right appointment and he is going to be the person that gets us going, it might take a few games. But as you're saying there, if there's already negativity before he even starts and there's a derby on the horizon, then I don't know. It could be, we could just end up he could just end up in another sort of QPR or second spell at Blackpool scenario. I think that I don't know. From what I've been listening to about the Blackpool second spell one, it's easy for me to say this from a distance. So I'm sure there's lots of nuances and stuff to it that I don't know about. But it does seem quite harsh to kind of come in towards the end of a season and then only get 2 games into the next season. Now, again, from what I could see, I didn't see many Blackpool fans that were peddling that line at the time. So there was lots of people that were most were glad to see the back of him. But on the face of it, it still does look a bit harsh that you kind of take over towards the end of a season, because that was getting mentioned within it. I think he didn't do well towards the end of the season, then lost the first 2, or can't remember exactly what all the stats and figures were. Sorry, but that seems quite early. It seems like very like what's happened to Ian Murray here in recent times.
Rafe Rovers, yeah. And Graham says, how much of this appointment is down to the analytics we are using? So, for what I understand, is that he was someone flagged up on the analytics. Again, when you ask about what the analytics are finding, I'm not sure. I think there's one thing where you look into how they analyse players, and then I think it's a whole different thing with managers. And that's the big thing about this, the analytics. They're secret and they are kind of under wraps. So it's actually difficult to find out actually what they consider. When we were talking earlier on, Craig, you had an idea of what kind of stuff they might look at?
Aye, so from, again, that book that I wrote about recently, and I've mentioned a couple of times, that guy gives a bit of an insight into how they identified Klopp. And one of the things he kind of points out is that the final season at Dortmund was a bit of a disaster. I think they were kind of like flirting with the relegation zone for most of the season, and then they ended up finishing like somewhere between 7th and 9th or something like that after like great run of success. And the guy who wrote that book, Ian Graham, working at Liverpool at the time, his model confidently showed that was just a sort of an outlier. They were performing well above what their results were getting. And yeah, so they will look at things like those kind of underlying stats, really. I mean, there's a few that I've started reading another book at the moment called Ex Genius by James Tippett. And just by reading the introductory paragraph and a few paragraphs in, he talked about a couple of metrics that I've never even heard of before. So I can't even remember the name of one of them that he said. So I'm interested to get to that. But yeah, they'll look at things like expected goals for and against, and whether they're under or overperforming them. And then they'll look at how their teams play and their styles of play and things like that. And that's all assessed by things like on-ball value, which I kind of like briefly described. Although Stats One call it on-ball value. Ludonatics, which is Ian Graham's, the guy that was at Liverpool's company, they call it possession value. So it's like This is because all these kind of models and stuff have been like independently, they make them up themselves basically. So that's why they have like different terms for pretty much the same thing. And like I say, on-ball value just kind of like takes the, it's not something I fully understand, but I get the gist of it. Kind of just, it just kind of like totals all the actions on the pitch, and every action kind of has a sort of positive or negative value depending on how much it leads to the creation of a chance or a concession of a chance or whatever. And yeah, so they use all these things and lots of other more complex things that I don't even know the start of they use. And a lot of it's just kind of kept under, like you've said before, there's lots of kind of non-disclosure agreements and all these kind of things to keep a lot of what's actually in the fed into them and all that kind of stuff under wraps.
And in terms of style, I know a lot of people have been talking about his system and his formations. Just looking at what he did at Blackpool, it was in his first spell he played a back three, played a back four, largely a back four, and it was either 4-4-2 or 4-3-3. Played 4-3-3 at QPR, and and latterly at Blackpool it was a kind of 3-4-1-2. He listened to an interview. Listen to an interview he did today when he went in at QPR, and he was asked about formation. He's got a preferred formation. He says, no, not really, no. I think the principles are more important than the formation. I think when you come into a football club, you look at the players who are in the squad, and I think a skill of mine is to choose a formation or way of playing that suits the players. It would be foolish to come in and have preconceived idea of what you want to do, because then the players might not be the best to carry out that formation. He's probably, this is one where if he takes that approach to Hearts, it's unlikely that we'll see the back three all that often, especially with we don't have the players to play that at the moment. And then in terms of style of play, there's similarities to what kind of Naismith said when he got the job. Very attack-minded, on the front foot. We want a team that is forward-thinking, forward-passing, forward-running, attack with the ball, attack without the ball. Everyone has to be together. Our game has to be with everyone in line and total clarity in how we want to play. So that's this kind of philosophy around how he wants to play, how he sets up. As we all know, this isn't just strictly on Naismith or Critchley. Every manager talks a good game when he's asked about his style of play. It's what happens on this on the Saturday, the Wednesday night, the Thursday night, whatever, is what matters. And then in terms of other, don't want to be overly negative, so other positives, he has done quite well in terms of, we talked about his player development at Blackpool. Blackpool have sold, for example, Jerry Yates. Was signed in 2020 for £200,000. He did really well under Critchley and was sold for 2.8 million. And then they've had a couple of other players who they were signed for free and have gone for high six figures or seven figure fees. So there is also that aspect, which I'm sure will be considered as well. But yeah, I think it is a situation which is not ideal for a manager to come into, when I think there was a lot of excitement around the next manager appointment, and then fans have had that excitement kind of taken away from them to an extent. But like you said, it's difficult. It's difficult pinpointing a specific person who there's no managers like, well, there's one in my mind who would be guaranteed success, but we won't mention his name.
I totally agree with that, because I was completely unsure on what kind of manager we needed, because I think we're in a bit of a weird situation, because we need something different short term than we do long term. So therefore I wasn't sure which one you go for, or which one you kind of err towards more, you know what I mean? So there are other ways, there are like third options where you could have like an appointment to the end of the season and then like go for it in the summer again, but that has its pitfalls as well. So yeah, I just didn't really know what kind of manager we needed. Whether it is this results now, safety first, just get us up the league a bit, or like some sort of pragmatic, forward-thinking manager, but you sort of sacrifice some results in the short term. So yeah, not knowing what manager we kind of really needed or wanted, I was unsure who we were going to get, and I think that's why we've ended up with like names that we were told it was going to be nobody that kind of like appeared on the bookies list and stuff, and that turned out to be the case. To add to what you had said about style of play, from what I could tell as well, he's pragmatic where he needs to be as well, and I think sometimes overly so to his detriment. And one of the other things that really stood out was he got made fun of for how he dressed. So I'm really looking forward to the Hearts fans just transferring what they did to Steven Naismith onto Neil Critchley as well.
There's because that was a big question. What will his touchline attire be? I think
a gilet.
I think it's
tracksuit and a gilet, a polo shirt, joggies, and a gilet.
Just to add to something that you said, I do think I've got sympathy for any manager who comes in at this time of the season or halfway through the season, because I find it so difficult, because especially usually when they come in at this stage of the season, the team are doing poor, as Hearts have been doing. So you need basically short-term results, but then you're kind of in the back of your mind thinking, right, he deserves time because he's coming into a squad that's not his, that's struggling. So it's just about kind of turning it around. But then when it does come to the next season and he's maybe had time to input his ideas, people have already started to form their own opinion off him, even though you're like, we should give him time. So yeah, it's always very difficult, the difficult period to come into. A few people have asked about his backroom staff. I'm not sure at the moment. I would imagine Garrett, I think is Garrity Mike Garrity, that's the one. Mike Garrity is someone he's taken with him at both QPR and Blackpool. People asking about if anyone from the club's going to be involved. I'm not sure. I'm sure we'll find out when the appointment is going to be. Dino asks, most importantly, does he have good press conference banter? I'm not sure. I think he's pretty safe. I think he goes into the Jimmy to lean mode off management's speak. So I don't think he'll give any bombastic lines. That's for sure. That's Cameron Ford says. Ian Brunskill and Mike Garrity are his assistants. Certainly they were.
I nearly got my B. I was trying to figure out the other guy's name.
Thank you. So yeah, it's a wee bit of a helter-skelter. 30 minutes of chat around the next Hearts manager, but I think we'll get a much better idea of Critchley once we kind of spoken to him and he's done his once he has actually been appointed and then actually speaks to the press. Dave 123 asks, when can we expect the announcement? I would potentially suggest tomorrow. Would be likely, but I can't say for sure. Is there anything else worth adding, Craig, or any other questions that people might have that they want us to answer?
I'm just having a quick look at my notes there. Oh yeah, one thing I think is maybe worth pointing out: the difference between Scotland and the English lower leagues. And I suppose this doesn't quite hold as true for Hearts. I mean, it's not that many weeks that we've got 2 games a week, is it? But like English lower leagues are relentless in their fixtures, and one of the reasons for I'll get there eventually. Don't worry. One of the reasons for Burnley and being interested in having a link up in Scotland, where they eventually did with Dundee, was that the draw with Scotland is that there's more breathing room to kind of coach players. So you can send players up, and it's not like a game on a Tuesday and a game on a Saturday, then a game on a Wednesday and a game on a Saturday. You actually have full weeks where you can train between games. So that will be something that will be different for what Appleton. Jesus, that was that was one of the guys
that was his replacement.
That was his replacement. It didn't last that long at Blackpool. Critchley, that's going to be something that's new for him, and who knows, that could be something that benefits him having more time on the training ground, because ultimately I think we were looking for a head coach, and it looks like that he is a bit of a more of a training ground manager than like a sort of than a manager's manager, if you see what I mean. So
yeah,
that could be something that works in his favour.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's something that comes across. It's
dragging
clearly.
Like a seal's arse now. Thanks. Cheers, mate.
No, I think he's talking about the managerial appointment.
I thought he was talking about us.
Everything that I've kind of read about him, but people talking about him or him talking about how he likes to manage, is that, he is very much a person who likes to get on the training ground and work with the players. So I think he is definitely someone who fits a criteria in terms of the mold that the club will be going down, just with the analytics and how they're going to be signing players. Going to be signing, I'm guessing, quite a lot of young players. So he ticks boxes in that kind of in those areas, those parties' remit. But again, it's fans will naturally just gravitate towards how he's done elsewhere, and it's very much a mixed bag. Deadfield asks, can you think of a bigger backlash of manager at Hearts than this?
Somebody mentioned them in the comments earlier and said that this had vibes of it, which I wouldn't agree with, but Graham Ricks got quite a lot of backlash and a few other managers around that time probably got more backlash than Critchley's getting at the moment.
Yeah, but we'll see. I very much hope that Hearts fans are patient and if he gets appointed and give him time, get behind him. I know it's not the one that everyone wanted, but like we said, it's underwhelming. But hopefully, I just think it's a bit unfair just to basically write it off as a disaster already, or simply just sit and wait for it to turn bad. So hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully comes in and he hits the ground running, wins his first three. If he wins his first 3 games, home him against Omonia and then Hibs, everyone's forgotten about it and everyone's happy. Because I mean that's what Hearts need is it's all well and good having someone for, like you said, to come in and steer us long term, but it's vitally important that Hearts will start picking up wins because they've not won a league game. So we will see in the coming days when Critchley is, whether he is appointed or not. I would expect hopefully that appointment to be confirmed tomorrow, but we will be back later on in the week to discuss however things go in the coming days. Be sure to check out the site for all the latest news, a couple of Joe Savage interviews as well, like kind of looking back on his time, Craig's piece on the Craig's piece for around Tony Bloom, and the book that sheds a bit of light on his success with Brighton is on the site, and be sure to check all that out. And we've also on Heart Standard on WhatsApp now, so you can get stories straight to your phone. Just search Heart Standard on WhatsApp and join our group. I'll be putting in a welcome message there later on this evening. But until the next time, goodbye.